have an entire new community come and participate in the TEC. And I thought we would kick the tires on our culture a little bit. So, how much does culture matter in the TEC? I thought a few things. Maybe we would start with, reading through the values that we have voted in, just to sort of get a check on that, and then open a discussion around how each of us would describe the culture of the TEC, the importance of culture, or is it not that important at all? What you think are cultural changes that could be harmful for the TEC? And then do you think there's cultural changes that could actually help the TEC be stronger? So sort of like just 4 points just to get people thinking and sharing their perspective and point of view. And let's see, welcome Mitch and Griff and Durgadas and Wonka and everyone who's joined. And Gustavo. So let's see, maybe I'll ask Wonka if you could read the values of the TEC, just as I don't know, just to hear them again.
Yeah, for sure. Our commons operates from a prosocial, human-centered perspective and prioritizes the advancement of token engineering over short-term profits. Integrity, curiosity, constructive inquiry, presence, and gratitude are foundational for maintaining mutual respect within our growing community. We encourage our members to be radically open source, non hierarchical, transparent in their intentions, and accountable for their actions.
Well, thanks for doing that. So I think we'll start by just going around maybe one time. I want people to have some time to really sort of dig into this a little bit. So set a timer for 3 minutes, and would love to just hear everyone's perspective on these 4 questions or other questions too. Like the purpose of a discussion group is to get a discussion going. And as the working group steward for SoftGov, I'm actually going to ask Livia if you want to get us started on this.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted because there's so much noise behind me. But we should be answering all those 4 questions in the 3 minutes. Is that what you?
It's just more meant as like a guide to share your perspective about, like, if you're not sure what to answer, then these are good ones to answer. If you have a different perspective you want to share around does culture matter in the TEC, it's really up to you or up to the person.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I think I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think well, I think from like putting the common stack hat a little bit, we've been testing a theory that that the cultural build is a core and foundational part of a healthy economy and of a self-managed and collaborative participatory economy. So I think we've been seeing, and we saw many DAOs failing because of the lack of a cultural structure and just the lack of understanding of how culture impacts everything else that we do, that is the base of our relationships and of everything that we're creating together. So we've been using Ostrom's principles as, like, Ostrom work actually is this framework to help us to guide our progress as a culture and economy and a commons. Like, if we are all sharing many resources, what types of resources are we sharing? What do we need to do that in a sustainable way? How can we abandon old patterns that are not useful for us anymore, and which are the reason why we are doing something different now? And I think if all of us are in the DAO space right now is because we have a certain agreement that a lot of the systems we come from are not what we want to build for the future. So I think in order to do that, to reshape this behavior, to look into things that are really meaningful for us, to think about economy as value creation, and value is something that is important to the heart also, not only to the market. I think it's very, just very foundational that we have a cultural build and cultural metrics and cultural understanding, and that we resonate on that. And I brought something, I've been reading this book from Bell Hooks called Love, called All About Love. That I don't know if people know Bell Hooks, but she's someone that inspires me a lot. She died recently, but she was a teacher and political scientist and philosopher, and she looks a lot into race and gender and culture and politics and the intersectionality of all of these things. And there's something in this book that talks how everywhere we learn that love is important, and yet we are bombarded by its failure. In the realm of the political, among the religious, in our families, and in our romantic lives, we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or it keeps us together. And I think this is something very important for us to be talking about, just how love informs decision making, and how we're talking so much about governance and community, and how we can bring more of the things that really matter, if you think why are you alive, to our everyday choices. Now I'll pass to Manu.
Thanks, Lily. Yeah, you called me. You called me writing a response to the answers, but I can say, in terms of describing the culture of the TC with one word, I would say magnanimous, which is having or showing a generous and kind nature. I think that's it. I mean, that I think that boils it down to just one word. Um, I mean, culture is extremely important, of course. Recently, when I with me hosting one session for the gravity training, I got the chance to understand culture and its relation to leadership, and how really culture it's really just a collection of leadership structures. And I mean, the leadership that Griff has shown, that Tam has shown, that Levy has shown, that all stewards really have shown, not just not core team or whatever, has impacted the growth vector, culturally speaking, of where we at and where we want to go. And yeah, honestly, I don't. I'm speechless. I think arguably TC is one of the best organizations to work at, like, in the whole world. I mean, it might not be that well known, but I do think that, like, there are certainly DAOs. I would feel from all the other DAOs I've contributed and be a part of, I think we're like top two, number one. And yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now, and let other people share their thoughts. And I'm gonna pass it to Juanca.
Thanks, Manu. And I am gonna steal a quote from Durgadas, and it's that what a culture educates, it's what becomes. And I think that we have been doing a good effort to educate in the community into what we want it to be, and that's why we have been having all these safe spaces, all these spaces to build relationship, also the conflict management, all the cultural build, the soft gov, all the practices, and all the informal things, like even having ice breakings in the sessions and being mindful to one another. So yeah, I think that we are trying to build a culture that can sustain the ideas that we want to develop. And I'll pass to Mitch.
Yeah, well, um, I think there were a lot of really cool things when I was having to deep dive into Ostrom's principles to eventually present the TEC. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting parts about sociocracy, horizontal organizations, working groups, like kind of like everyone having the autonomy to work on what interests them, but we all have a mission that we align on. And so like that kind of system there is like a cultural build was very interesting to me. But then it's like as we sort of grew and everyone kind of went on their own tangents, we kind of realized that we started building bureaucratic structures that even contributors couldn't figure out how to interact with. And so it's like it was becoming overwhelming or overly complicated. Like, how do we actually get stuff done? Who do we ask for? How do we give permission to people? And like we still haven't figured it out, and like that's creating conflict in some places. And then we get frustrated by our own bureaucracy, and then we make arbitrary decisions in the moment that we eventually regret having made after the fact. Another thing I've noticed is like my own feeling of like not enough token engineering, not enough technical, and a little bit too much more in like the fuzzy realms. So it's like, you know, culture and mindfulness, and sorry Wonka, but like safe spaces, and like Rudy mentioned gender politics, and sometimes I feel lost within that because it's like that doesn't feel like token engineering to me. You know, I think about it differently. And Durgadas brought up a really good point, something about like toxic positivity. And so it's like we kind of have this like always positive image, and somehow that stifles people from giving direct criticism. And so that's kind of how I feel about things in the moment. I'm sorry, that's like a really drastic change of topic. I have a lot of other opinions, but I'll leave it there, and I'll pass it on to Edu.
Hello. Can you repeat the question, Tam, if you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, the council is just the topic for the council today is how much does culture matter in the TEC? So sort of guideline for helping shape this discussion, there's 4 points to address, although anyone can address anything they want to share in whatever manner they want. But the 4 questions, just to serve as a sort of guideline, are: how would you describe the culture of the TEC? What is the importance of culture? Or is it actually not that important at all? And do you think there are cultural changes that would be harmful to the TEC? And do you think there are ways culture can change that would actually be better for the TEC?
Thank you. Culture in the TEC, I think I didn't understood it. I didn't understand it at the beginning because I didn't have a full scope. And I remember having this conversation when I think it was Angela or Sargama or Cliff or someone like this who said like economy is a social science, and that for me is struck a chord. Like you cannot have a social science and the social aspect of economy without thinking the cultural part. Because if you have a society, you have a social aspect, then you have culture. It's implied on it, and that for me made a click. And I think the culture in the DEC is what has brought a balance in the organization. It has brought balance. It has brought the openness. It has brought the capacity to share knowledge, which is something that I have found so hard in other spaces to be accessible to, the sharing knowledge part. So um, I feel that there are certain things that could be improved, like for example the Ostrom principle, just to have a clear understanding of how we apply these principles when someone enters to our culture, making very clear what are these principles and how they apply, besides the concept of what do they represent. And for me, it's a little bit of what Mitch explained. Of we don't have enough token engineers. We don't have enough, But it's like, but it could be part of our culture to build up this community and to build up this contrast of even the developers have to learn about culture, and even the culture have to learn about developing. So it's this kind of for me has become the culture of the DEC. It is that it has become a safe space to either learn um, one side of the coin. It could be the side of technical side, or it could be the other side that is the culture, and both complement our economy. And that for me made whole sense, and it still makes sense. And I think that's a path that very few people are taking, and I think it's a very interesting one to discover. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't know who has gone, so I pass it back to you, Tim.
Sure, cool. Well, I think maybe I'll ask Vi if you'd like to pick it up from here.
Yeah, can you like scroll up like the 4 questions that I can structure my answer a little bit? Yeah, so I think that culture is definitely something that aligns with the open source values. They were definitely really driven by value creation rather than the instantaneous or short-term profits, and that's a really neat idea. However, I also like, kind of resonate with what Mitch stated, like uh but I feel like once we get past the commons upgrade and we move into the future, I'd like to see how the technical layer interacts with the cultural layer. Like, when do we become a shelling point? Because we have an audience that's uh, educated in token engineering. Can we get those people to interact more with actual token engineers and move on from there? And yeah, I'd like to see that. And that's pretty much it. I really love praise. Praise is awesome. And I pass it to Durgadas.
Culture is everything. I'd like for you guys to reflect upon what's been shared up to now and say, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We sound like a trauma survivors group here. We're people. The culture is what matters. It's the only thing that matters. We're people. We're human beings. We have to treat ourselves well. We have to treat ourselves with compassion. We have to treat ourselves, all the talk about tech and all this stuff is at the service of us and the culture. And so, like, I just want everyone to reflect on how abused we've been to be like, do we deserve to have privacy over technology? I mean, are you kidding me? What is that? Why do we treat ourselves that way? Like, just let's give ourselves a break. Come on, like, what? I don't know. It's just listening to everyone here. It's incredible to me. Just how trained we've been by the abusive system that we've been in for so long. And I just want everyone to remember, that there's this balance between the technology, the bureaucracy, putting things in place so people don't get hurt, as opposed to getting things done versus and we have to, that's a tricky balance. So democracy doesn't really exist, but if there are no real other good alternatives, and without actively participating in it and having tragedies happen and being disappointed and angry and upset and interacting with the whole process, which is what our culture is, we and having compassionate frameworks for doing that, I think, is what we're constructing here with gravity and everything. And there's a kind of mindfulness that exists that just doesn't exist explicitly in many other cultures. And furthermore, I would say that the culture is the ground floor upon which the economy is built. And if the culture doesn't exist, then the value of the coins and all the other stuff economically will either become extractive or otherwise violent or whatever. So I just like to reflect on the fact that we as a culture, I think we're trying to undo that type of thing. That's why I'm here. I mean, it's the only reason I'm here, really. And the fact that we have to deal with bureaucracies, sure, as long as we don't live in service of bureaucracies, the bureaucracy live in service of us. As long as we don't get that directionality messed up, and we always put ourselves first, both as a collective and as individuals, then the technology and all of the other things that we're building here need to be in service of those things, rather than something else. So yeah, I have very strong opinions about this. So I can go on, but I will not take any more time. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. I just want to note Livia's comment here. So in my opinion, bureaucracy is very different from complexity. I think it's important to address this difference. We're not used to complex systems because hierarchy and centralization give a false sense of simplification. And then for the perspective of token engineering, I think maybe you also dropped this token engineering flower, which I think is important to share, but I'll keep passing it and wait for my turn to talk more about the mythical beast token engineer and wild in the forest that nobody can capture. I'll pass to Septimus to keep going.
Thank you, Tam. Yeah, for me, one of the most important cool aspect that promotes also good vibes in the TC is like this rule, like we have, like we trust each other, like, and it's like for me personally, it's very hard to trust people, but it's in the rules, right? When we're doing stuff in the TC, we must trust the other one because you get, you get more rewarded actually trusting others, which is great. And then also like. Mitch was also talking about like the lack of token engineers. I really think we are creating this space where we all are improving. Like if you ask the Septimus from like a year ago about any of those parameters, any about all these economies systems were like, I have no idea, and just by being here, I'm learning a lot. And like of course, like having more people ahead on the knowledge is always good, but actually like like even when people start to work together from small, you can reach like good results. And yeah, like I really think those 2 points for me are the most important, like the good vibes that we are from the trust and the thing like this space is making everyone just actually like from all the ones that create the big proposals like are in the runoff, like no one had a background on token engineering like 2 years ago. So I think we're doing great. Yeah, back to you, Tom.
And I don't know, Chewy, would you like to share your thoughts on how much does culture matter in the TEC, or any of these 4 sort of points for launching a discussion?
Yeah, well, I feel that many people have said some very inspiring things, and at the same time, I feel that we are in like the other extreme of what could be considered like a whole spectrum. Every time I see conflict in other DAOs or just in general in the space, like I always love to like ping Juan and like send him like a forum post or something. It's like, look at this drama, because I find it so interesting, like as a case study. But at the same time, I feel that as time has passed by, I feel that we are like in the other side of the spectrum, which has its pros and its cons. And I really like reflect on this. I think it was quoting Durgadas, but try to avoid like toxic positivity, because at the same time, let's face it, like it's gonna keep us and it's gonna distance us from certain kinds of conflicts that are inevitable and that we should not try to avoid, because it's also gonna give us opportunity to grow. So I would stay with this, like let's try to I don't know, like feel more gravity forms, or just try to think about like some stuff that that bothers us. And I also feel that some great feedback has been mentioned about some of these issues that we could address. So yeah, I would stay with that. Like I feel that we have done a great job building this culture, but at the same time we should avoid like censoring conflict. And I'll pass it to um, I don't know. I don't know who has gone yet. Griff. I'll pass it to Griff.
Thanks, Chewy. Yeah, I really think we have one of the most robust cultures in crypto, and I don't know that it's always necessary to have a robust culture, but for what we're trying to do, which is like create something that can last, decades, I at least I think that's what we're trying to do with the token engineering commons and other potential commons. Having a robust culture is critical. You can see how many DAOs fail. Even just on XDAI in the OneHive ecosystem, you can see like lack of robust culture, creating challenging situations in different communities. So I do think, yeah, we're over engineered. We probably are a little over engineered for our purposes right now as a group of probably like 20 to 50 core, like 20 core people and maybe 50 like auxiliary people. Apparently 80 plus voters, which is pretty amazing. We probably don't need this strong of a culture, but we're set up to scale and succeed more than any DAO I've ever been a part of. And so I feel pretty good about it. I really think that culture is actually a critical piece of token engineering that's understated. That if you're going to create a token, you're going for network effects, you're trying to build a community of token holders who care about it. And, conflict resolution and these other social, cultural, like dynamics that we've really fostered are creating a very healthy garden bed for us to actually build what we're building on top of. We still haven't even launched. I mean, technically we're kind of launching today and it's a 2-week launch period, but we haven't even launched yet, So it's like the garden bed is just really rich. We have rich soil to grow. And I feel like even though we don't have very many what would you call them, like classical token engineers, we're growing our own and creating a fertile ground where if someone wants to learn how to do cultural token engineering, they can come in, they can be welcomed, it's inviting, they feel good about coming in, and it's sticky, right? And I don't think it'll take too long for the token engineers to also flock to us when we actually have money and we have something going on chain real. Right now it's for the last year and a half, it's all been talk, and now we actually have not all talk. We've been doing a lot of cool stuff and deploying things. We raised $1.5 million, blah, blah, blah. But, now starting in a week from now, we'll have the actual people will start being able to vote on things and start proposing things. And then after that, a week after that, we'll actually have a token with a market value. And that's when things get interesting. I mean, the amount of and having such a robust, strong culture is going to make it a lot easier to handle the influx of people that will come when it's like, oh, there's a token. Oh yeah, I bought some of the TEC, and now I want to figure out what's going on, which is a lot harder to handle than actual interested people who don't have that money dimension. So I think it's very. I think the other side of why culture is so important to the TEC is, of course, common stack influence. The point for the common stack was to study the cultural build and really like think about the cultural build and like probably engineer the cultural build and just do what we have to get the contracts to work and everything safely, of course. But like really the focus was how do we build an awesome culture for a community and what can we learn from that? So I think that had a lot of influence on why the culture is so over-engineered. And why it's so critical to the TC. I will pass it to Gustavo.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can.
Well, thanks for giving me a voice here. I'm just, again, I'm fairly new to all of the TEC, and I've just been like observing, and maybe I can give an opinion from like an outsider, somebody really new just coming into the community, and maybe that can help like a sort of like a feedback. For me, it was like really weird to come into a community where everyone is like really positive. It felt at some point like not uncomfortable, but yeah, but it's not common to get like into a online community where everyone is like a stranger, and to observe and feel all of the positivity that's going on. So I've been observing like the conversations and getting into the meetings and just being like a listener. And up until now, I've been very surprised about that. I felt a lot of consistency from what is being like said and taught, and how people behave. Like when I've been in one-on-one interactions or interacting more directly with people, I feel that there's a consistency, and that consistency actually has become like a form of trust for me, and I feel really good about that. So yeah, I'm really surprised. Like I've never seen a community like this before. I just have like a little bit of similar opinion to what others have said about like too much positivity, maybe blocking someone that does not have a similar opinion, and maybe not being able to express that opinion that is different from what most people are having an opinion about. And I'm just curious to see how those issues or those differences in opinion work out in an environment that for me is very positive and is very good, and I'm just like liking it a lot. So yeah, definitely agree on that culture is very important, and again, like I'm very excited to continue participating and being part of this.
Cool. Thanks. And is there anyone else who hasn't gone?
I didn't go.
Oh, Lauren. Okay, Lauren.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with a lot of what people are saying, especially with regards to the culture being really open and welcoming. It's like I think one of the best things about the TC, and so many people come in, they're like, oh, a dashboard, what's that? And then but then they stay because there's so many people who are like welcoming them, onboarding them, who are like really interested in creating these connections. And I think that this is like a super solid foundation on which to build. It's like I think communities that are like, I don't know, I think sometimes it slows us down, all of the effort that we put into like having positive connections with each other and resolving conflicts, and it does sort of sometimes seem like, oh, it's bureaucratic, but then it also adds a lot of value because then we're stronger as a team. It's like we don't have like grudges against each other. Like I like all of you. You're all great. So it's really nice to be like part of a group of people that like I really do feel like all of us are allies, and I think that this is something that like is really valuable. Yeah, I feel like something though that I'm like I see happening a little, that I get a little bit worried that will like continue is like I don't know, like sometimes making a lot of a deal out of a small thing. Like something that I want to embody more is like the idea of just not taking things personally. So like when something is said about something that was done, then like looking at the thing that it's criticizing rather than taking it as like personal criticism. And I think that like, I mean, with Gravity and all the conflict management stuff that we do, we're doing a lot of like I feel like we're also doing a lot of like self-improvement as individuals, but sometimes I get a little worried of like some of the like the energy or the time that gets taken up about things that to me don't seem important, and then slow down a lot of progress that I won't get specific on because I just end up offending people, but sometimes I wish that like I love that we work and support each other, and then I also wish sometimes that we would focus on the things that are happening and like less exactly like the particular words that were used sometimes. I don't know. It wasn't the most eloquent way of trying to describe that, but that's all I really have to say. I see YGG just walked in. We're discussing the culture of the TEC, so there's some open questions on the agenda. I'll either pass it to you and you could just jump off at that, or maybe Tam wants to explain further.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren, for sharing. Hey, YGG, and welcome. So glad you were able to make it to this one. So we're talking about how much does culture matter in the TEC? And as part of this, like maybe an area we could use, or four questions just to sort of jump off from as a basically springboard is how would you describe the culture of the TEC? What is the importance of our culture? Or hey, is it not really that important at all? Do you think there are cultural changes that could be harmful to the TEC? And do you think that our culture can change in ways for the better? So feel free to sort of riff on our culture in the TEC.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. When people have ideas, it's really reinforced and encouraged that they roll with them and go forward with them. So it's very much an open, encouraging culture. I think all of that is really important. And of course, the culture of the TEC is important. I mean, we spent a year on culture, so I think it's extremely important. My concern that I want to share that might be other than different from what others bring up is sort of stagnancy or attachment to our culture. I think our culture has been strong and we've spent a lot of time developing it, but it's not as highly dimensional as maybe it could be or it will develop into over time. I mean, we're a community of people all around the world, coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and we're trying to achieve things that are on a really large scale, really profound and significant. And I think our culture is going to, we want it to be very diverse and organic. And I think that's somewhat contrary to what I mentioned off the bat, which is being extremely focused and objective oriented. Those things are almost a trade-off. It's hard to be completely focused and have everyone aligned while at the same time kind of growing in different directions and incorporating diversity. And I don't think we're on any extreme of that spectrum. I think we actually incorporate both quite well. It's nice to see new working groups popping up, like the Communitas working group, I think really represents and addresses this concept of like encouraging diversity and allowing for very organic growth. How do you think the culture can change for the better? Yeah, I think what I would want to bring to this conversation is sort of that awareness of the spectrum between very focused, highly focused alignment and moving in a particular direction versus encouraging different voices and different ideas, and possibly taking turns in our direction. And I think, yeah, just bringing awareness to that kind of spectrum of diversity versus highly focused alignment. And I think we do a pretty good job. And I think we're doing a pretty good job already. I just think awareness of that is good.
Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Tam.
I didn't miss anyone, right? We've all gone. Okay. Then I guess I'll say some things too, because this is something I think about a lot. When I first started, I come from such a more corporate startup, like Wall Street, Silicon Valley background. So this entire culture that we have is like, what? We're going to do what now? We're all going to decide together. So it took me a long time to sort of get into this groove, there's other ways and productive ways to have a group of people have a shared mission and achieve it with the word that I like most, harmoniously, like in harmony. So working together. And I really have come to strongly appreciate the culture that we have. And at the same time, I think it's important to share that culture is not a fixed thing. Culture changes, culture evolves. But the most important part is that it's anchored in some values, right? So culture can disappear. Many cultures have disappeared. Corporate cultures, native cultures, all kinds of different cultures, religious cultures, they can come and go, right? So they can come and they can go. And practicing the rituals and sort of having the shared values anchored in the rituals that we practice, actually, and the interactions and the relationships that we have, I think is the most important part. And with that anchoring, in our case, it's really to Ostrom's 8 principles. We can have a culture that can change and evolve and grow with all the new people that come in and bring so much. I mean, one of the biggest challenges of developing any culture is getting a group of people to agree to shared values and certain behaviors, right? Like culture just expresses behaviors. And one of the special challenges in DAO's cases is that we're talking about different time zones, communication frequently over text or mails, which is not the most ideal form of communication, especially when there is some sort of conflict, which can snowball into something outrageous if it's not usually like having conversations face to face to avoid those kinds of escalations. And so we have to create this sort of shared understanding, shared behaviors, shared vision, shared values with these amazing challenges of everyone working remotely, most people working, alone, not in a group with other people, not meeting our coworkers, not having lunch together, having like very directed, focused meetings, and having some sort of relationship with each other outside of these very directed, focused meetings. And I do want to just, again, and I'm going to praise Eduardo now for building Communitas into this place that cares about not just, hey, we're getting shit done, we're in the working group, but building these relationships with each other, because those little, like we all these little threads, and when our culture like weaves us together into something that's a lot stronger than each individual thread. So I really feel it's important that, I don't know, I just really feel that part is important about it. And then I want to talk a little bit about inclusion, because there's a group that I really admire, and they had a call on Monday, and it's like, oh, I have some time, I'm going to hop on. And it was a Zoom call, and there was, 25 people on the Zoom call, and I go through each page, and there's 4 pages, and so it's like 100 people, maybe. I think there was 3 women. And I was just like, wait, what? Like, what's going on? Is there really just 3 women in this 100-person meeting right now? So I feel like this idea of inclusion and making sure this is a space, like we're creating a space that everyone feels welcome. And I don't know that I can actually, push that home enough. It's not what other places are like. What we have is just not what other places are like. And I think that's really special, and we should continue to work towards that. And I think, yeah, one of the other things I guess, there's okay, yeah, there's a lot I want to say actually. There's this saying that came up a lot. Culture eats strategy for lunch, right? There's a lot of organizations, and they're like, yeah, we're so strategic, and we're gonna sell this, and then they're gonna buy our market share is this, and our competition, and we know the landscape, and then it's sort of like, yeah, that's a great idea, but without the culture, teams fail. And it's there's a lot of organizations, right? A lot of organizations that we know, and culture fit has risen to the top of the priority for whether or not somebody gets hired, because even a superstar with the wrong culture fit doesn't perform and can cause friction in the team that she's working in or he's working in. And so it's sort of like culture fit is so important in so many organizations. And I think that and not just organizations, in cities and villages and towns and church basements or synagogues or what have you. What else do I want to say about this? I want to say something about the token engineer, because I had a really serious panic attack. I was serious panic about this. I've gone through the cycle where I was we failed. I think it was March this year. We have no token engineers. How are we even going to hatch? What's the point without token engineers? And I feel like there's a few things that have changed since then. Most of it is my own thinking about this. I really love what we go back to this idea of what are token engineers. There's a few things, right? One is token engineers aren't just people writing Solidity. Token engineers are Zeptimus, Juan Carlos with his new proposal, myself, Mitch, Lauren, the people in this room are budding token engineers. Just because we're not writing Solidity code or a more highly focused scientific pursuit doesn't that does not equate with token engineering. So my understanding of it has evolved so much. And then the second thing is we're growing people in this community. And the third thing is the Token Engineering Academy, so the Token Engineering community and Token Engineering Commons are really getting closer and closer linked together. This month we're going to have our first joint session. So it's Token Engineering Academy, Token Engineering Commons together presenting Introduction to Token Engineering. So, and then it's okay, there's Zargam and Paul and Phil who all participated in the vote and participated in the parameter configurations. So I feel I'm less worried that we don't have token engineers, probably because I went through this exercise worried that we didn't have enough, and then realized these few things, right? There's an idea of a token engineer, but it's maybe it's just this mythical idea of what one is. And I think we can recognize that there's a little of that we all have, and that we're continuing to grow and nurture. And then so the last thing, it's people have said it so much nicer than me, the garden bed and the foundation. I think of culture as the operating system on which all of the programs are run. And it's you can run amazingly fast programs, but if the OS has a bug, then all systems crash. So without culture, without the OS being strong, being robust, being reliable, the programs crash. And so I guess that's something else I want to share. We have 10 minutes left, and there was a lot said. I do appreciate anyone who's writing or adding into the document themselves, because it makes it super easy to share thoughts. But I wanted to pass back to Livia to ask if, as the steward of SoftGov, this really impacts you a lot, impacts all of us. But I wanted to give you the floor to share any other thoughts that you might want to.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, thanks everyone. And that's super helpful to hear. And I think there's many reflections. I wanted to share something. Can you see my screen? So somebody asked in the research group once if what was culture, and I really kept thinking about it. And And my intuitive response was that culture is the tension between tradition and innovation. And I think that is like very alive. Like as long as these two things exist, then culture exists. And as long as they are connected to each other. So I was trying to map it out. What tradition consists of and what innovation consists of. So some of the things that I think are related to tradition are rituals, norms, manners, boundaries, beliefs, symbols, education. They all are maintainers of a certain tradition that is built. And I think in the TEC, we kind of built a tradition from the ground. There was one call that we had, I don't know, months ago that click happened. Like, oh my God, we have a tradition. Like we have, like, there are things that we started doing that became rituals that people got attached to them. And I think to YGG's point too, of like recognizing what are the things that we are attached to and what are the opposite forces to them. So then in the other side of innovation, inquiry, curiosity, openness, research, experiment, intersectionality, they all challenge the things that are in the tradition point. And if we keep a good balance between them, I think we're going to move in a spiral up. Like, I think we're going to be evolving. But I think if we get stuck into either one or the other, if we go totally to the side of innovation, we'll probably dismantle the culture. And if we go totally in the side of tradition, we'll probably get stuck and stiff and not evolve. And I think one point to inclusion is intersectionality. Like the more different opinions and different backgrounds that we can welcome into the community, more resilient we'll be, and the more we'll tap into this collective intelligence. And I think this is very important for a discipline like token engineering, that we're building new economies, and economies are like the definition of economy is the way we transact scarce resources. So how do we manage scarce resources is the definition of economy. And if we bring more and more perspectives to how we're doing this is like the core challenge of humanity. And I think it's really exciting that we're just having like so many insights on how to create this in a macro level that can start reaching that network effect that Griff was talking about. And it feels like such a responsibility also to be so involved with token engineering, to be able to think about that. And I pressed the wrong one. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share. And just one last thing is that I really resonate on what Chewy said of not censoring conflicts or avoiding conflicts. And something Durgata said recently when we had a call was that the objective of gravity should be for gravity not to exist. Like the more we are able to take in the tools that are being given to us by gravity, like nonviolent communication, for example, like the more we are able to take ownership of the conflicts and start solving with ourselves, the less we'll need an external mediation. And that would be like a signal of health for us. But also understanding that we're not there and that probably we won't be there for generations maybe. That it's really good to have that pillar supporting us.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Hi, Acid Laser. Welcome to the Stewards Council. We only have 3 minutes before the community call, but since you maybe haven't had a chance, do you want to take 2 minutes and say, share your thoughts on how much does culture matter in the TEC? And if you're not sure how to answer that question, then you could describe the culture of the TEC. What's the importance of our culture, or is it not important at all? Do you think cultural changes, do you think of there are cultural changes that could be harmful, and do you think of there are cultural changes that could be